So Durin is one of the most versatile new characters we've seen in Genshin Impact in a long time, and in this video I'll just be explaining what he does, what he gives you, and the very large amount of teams that he can give very good value to where you can use him. Before we continue that though, if you're trying to get Durin or any of the characters mentioned in this video, I would recommend getting Genesis Crystals from ldshop.gg. LDShop is a cheap, fast, and secure game top-up website where you can buy different games currencies including Genshin Impact's 30% cheaper or more. Check it out in the link in the description or the pinned comment. Alright, so back to the video. First of all, we're going to explain what does Durin do and what does he provide for a team in general. So first of all, Durin is going to be a pyro sub DPS mainly / support. And when I say sub DPS, he's definitely going to be one of the best sub DPSs we've seen in the game period. He's definitely going to be pulling crazy high numbers as a sub DPS, and honestly he's just going to be rivaling some bad DPSs as an off-field sub DPS, which is completely crazy. So sub DPS damage is definitely not just like passive damage, it's very considerable damage of your team. As I said, it will be at the level of some weak main DPSs, and it can genuinely be like half of the damage a strong main DPS deals easily. So yeah, that's the first thing that he's going to provide. It's going to be super high amounts of off-field pyro damage. The second thing that he's going to provide is mainly just going to be support, and it's that you're going to be able to provide resistance shred when pyro has a reaction with anything else basically. Whether it's burn-in, overloaded, pyro swirl, pyro crystallize even. Whenever you hit an opponent with any reaction of these, that opponent's pyro resistance and also the resistance of the other element that triggered the reaction is going to be decreased by 20%. So it's basically just 20% resistance shred to pyro and any other elements. And obviously that's going to be super good and valuable in any teams that rely on any pyro related reactions. So obviously that's going to be super good for basically any team, literally, except like physical teams, because any team is going to be able to provide some sort of pyro reaction. If Durin is on the team, obviously it's going to be pyro, and then the main DPS is going to be any other elements. And as long as the main DPS and Durin do a reaction, then the enemy resistance is going to be decreased to both pyro and also the element of your main DPS. That means Durin is going to be super versatile and valuable with basically no restrictions, genuinely. Now if we're talking for his team requirements in general, or where he works best, if we're talking about like his ideal team, you'd want a team that relies heavily on pyro reactions. For example, it's usually like Vaporize, Melt, Overload, Burn-in, whatever. Any team that does a lot of like pyro related reactions is going to be pretty good. And the final other thing is that you probably want to play him with another Hexray character. That's the characters who got buffed recently, like Venti, Fischl, Albedo, whatever. I did a whole video about them before, you can check it out. But if you play him with any of those characters, due to his passive, your other passive is going to be increased by 75%. So the resistance shred is going to be 35% instead of 20%, or the damage increase is going to be more. But it's mainly good for the resistance shred. That means it's going to be pretty considerably more valuable in Hexray teams where another Hexray character is present. So those are just going to be generally the teams where you can maximize his support and personal damage. But honestly, as I said before, you can genuinely play him in like 80% of the team's game, literally. As long as the team doesn't like heavily mind pyro on your team, or like heavily messes with your reactions, for example, or steals them or whatever, then in that case you can just slap in Durin and he's going to be dealing crazy amounts of damage and providing you with resistance shred, which is a very, very versatile character, and we haven't seen characters like this in a while. Now moving on to team examples. First of all, let's start with like his perfect teams, where as I said before, he's going to be maximized. Those are going to be like his go-to teams where he's going to have the best value, and then we're going to move on to more like general teams where you can use him. So first of all, starting off with the Hexray characters, as I said before, you can use him as a support for any of them, literally. For example, if you take a main DPS out of them, let's say Klee, in that case you can just add him as a support for Klee. So you can have like Klee and Bennett, and then you can add Durin. For the last character, as I said before, you'd want to trigger a reaction for him to have the resistance shred, so it's not going to be good in like full pyro teams. So you want a character who can provide any other elements for you to provide any reaction, basically any pyro reaction is going to do, but you cannot play a full pyro team. So usually you can add someone like Chevreuse, for example, or Fischl or whatever, so it's just going to do an overloaded reaction. But any character who can provide a reaction is going to do. For this case specifically, that's probably going to be the best team sort of for Klee, so it's going to be pretty good if you play like Chevreuse. She's going to be buffing the overloaded reaction, very good overloaded team, and then Durin here is just going to be doing the resistance shred. Any pyro damage is going to be amplified, and any electro damage is going to be amplified, which is definitely going to be super good. It's also going to be dealing incredible amounts of damage on his own, and it's going to bring very good value to this team for sure. You can play him as a support in even like a Geo team, which is one of the weirdest things we've seen in a while. So for example, it's going to be the perfect support in like a Navia team because he can provide resistance shred. Usually you cannot do that for most Geo main DPSs. Right now with Durin, as long as you play him there, you can provide resistance shred pretty easily. So you can have a team with like Navia and then Bennett just to buff Navia, Navia, and then Durin is going to be there providing the pyro resonance, the double pyro for Navia, and he's also just going to be doing resistance shred or anything like this. For the last character, you'd want him to be Geo, so the best pick for that is obviously just going to be Albedo, since it's also a hex array character, and that's going to allow you to gain even more resistance shred and damage bonus from Durin. This is also just going to be one of the most perfect uses for Durin. It's just a clear upgrade to his team. He can provide anything that other teammates can't provide, but also with resistance shred, which is super good. You can play him with Wanderer, for example. You can have like Wanderer and then just Bennett again. And then you can have Venti as a hex array character. He's also just got buffed recently, which is pretty good. And then you can have Durin there doing the same stuff. Pyro Swirl is going to happen. And both Pyro and Anemo resistance shred is going to be decreased to enemies. And that's going to buff the Wanderer a lot. And also Durin is going to be dealing a lot of damage of his own. So it's also one of the most perfect teams that you can use with Durin. So those are like the perfect uses for Durin in general. There's still a lot, like genuinely. But you can also use him as just like a general pyro sub DPS or pyro applier who can also be a buffer. A very good rule of thumb I found, which works like 90% of the time, generally any teams that had like Ling or sub DPS Moika as a pyro sub DPS, you can probably replace Durin and he's gonna work either better or at least the same as those characters. So obviously that's gonna be a lot of teams. It's very rare where you're gonna see him doing worse than those characters. Maybe like melt teams where he just simply cannot apply enough pyro, so Ling might be a little better, but in general his going to be either better or as good as those characters. So he's probably the new pyro sub DPS GOAT for now, at least in my opinion. But yeah, an example is going to be like a Milani team. So you can just replace Moika there. You can have like Milani and then let's say Xiaolin and then Durin as a buffer and pyro applier there. Is going to be applying pyro in a very good rate for Milani. So that's going to be pretty good. And also the resistance shred is going to be pretty valuable. For last character, you can add anyone really, but you can add like Mona, for example, as like a perfect hex array character. She also buffs Milani pretty well, but it's not necessary. You can add any like second support flex for Milani and it's going to work pretty fine. One of the other very good uses for him is going to appear now, which is Dendro teams. That's one of the cases where he's going to be just much better than Ling or Moika as a pyro sub DPS or applier because they cannot provide resistance shred, and it's very hard to give like Dendro resistance shred right now in Dendro teams for Dendro main DPSs, but Durin is going to provide that pretty easily in burn-in teams. So one of the best examples is just going to be Kinnish. So if you play just like a normal Kinnish burn-in team, so you can have like Kinnish as the Dendro main DPS, you can have Emily and then Bennett, and then you can add Durin there. It's going to be providing the pyro resonance and also most importantly the resistance shred, which is very rare and scarce in this type of teams. So honestly, Dendro teams are going to be one of the best use cases for Durin. You can use him with even like Nuviet, for example. It's going to be a very good use for him. So you can have like Nuviet, Furina, Durin, and like Xiaolin, for example, or Albedo or whatever, and that's also going to be a very good type of team. But yeah, you guys get the idea now. It's going to be very usable in a very large variety of teams. The main thing is that if the team just doesn't mind pyro, as long as it doesn't mess with their reactions, some teams are going to be very sensitive when you add like a pyro or something like that, then it might not work. But other than that, it's genuinely one of the most versatile characters we've seen in a while. It's a very good combination of a sub DPS pyro and also a support, which we rarely see. He can genuinely replace the Anemos in a lot of teams. Like Kazuha is not going to be like the best in a lot of teams now. Usually he's going to be the best, and also provide very good new value for Geo main DPSs and also Dendro main DPSs, because before obviously you cannot swirl Dendro and Geo, so it's very hard to buff them and get the resistance shred with the Anemos and the Verdescent set. But now Durin is going to fix that issue. But yeah, tell me where you guys are going to be using them in the comments. Please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.